Let's start. We are going to discuss today the paper Menagerie by Ken Liu, a short story that I didn't know anything about, just that it won some prizes, some of the best contests that can be in science fiction. It won it. And well, it turns out that it's a story much very different from what I thought it was going to be. So, what do you all think about the paper Menagerie?
Prizes of science fiction.
Yeah, that's what surprised me. Like,
Nebula,
doesn't feel like science fiction when you read it.
At all.
Yes, because they mix fantasy and science fiction in a world. So, well, you can see some fantasy here in the story.
It's more of magical realism.
Magic realism.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
exactly.
thinking about that. For me, it's more like magic realism.
Has that feeling, but yeah, Adrian was right. It won the Hugo and the Nebula prizes, which are often awarded to science fiction.
Yeah.
Works.
I mean, I understand those prizes as being science fiction prizes. Sorry, Jessica.
And he is the translator, indeed, of, I don't know, somebody mentioned.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right, I knew it.
Eugenia was right. And I was like, no, I don't think so. But it was right.
And I was like, yeah, I remember because they had the same surname, like Ken Liu and
That's
Ken
true.
Liu. And I was like,
yeah.
I think
Are they
so.
related? No.
Yeah, I couldn't have noticed because I read or I listened to the Spanish version, which is, of course, is a different translator. Makes sense.
Excuses.
Anyways, let's start with our typical round of applauses or speeches about the book. And the first one in my gallery is Andrea.
Okay, so I really like the story. I would say it's like a sad, but at the same time cute in a way story. I really like the detail of the animals being able to move. I didn't thought it was science fiction at all. I feel like it was more like magic realism. The only thing is like maybe the author wants to explain so many things, I think, like the relationship between mother and son, the growth of the child, even the relationship between the parents, like so many things. And maybe I think it could be fit better in a short novel than a short story, maybe a bit more length. But nevertheless, I like it.
Good. Next one should be Eugenia.
Well, I also really liked the story. So it was very beautiful, very emotional, and very deep because family relationships are, especially with cultural differences, can be very complex things that you have to treat carefully. So I thought it was very, very well written, very well transmitted, and even though I don't think the main character, the narrator, is a very likable character, not as much as his mother, of course. I really empathize with him. I really understood where he came from, how he was shaped by his environment, and how it was only his response to what was given to him. And I really connected with the story. It really made me feel a lot of things. And that's what I value more in a short story. And I agree with Andrea. I didn't really think of it as science fiction. I was trying to find the science fiction in it, and I couldn't find anything. So, but I enjoy origami a lot. The paper folding practice. Some old people from Spain would call it papiroflexia. I think it's a cool name too, and it really made an original and nice touch for me to read it about it.
Nice. Antonio, you're next.
I've been surprised by the story because I didn't know anything about that. Didn't really think about this particular author. I think it was quite interesting. Was somehow touching, okay, because it's giving you more than one story in one, okay. Then how is the relationship between the mother and the boy child? It seems to be at the beginning, and how really is at the end, and why. Okay, it's providing. It's having. You got the story of the childhood of the teller of the story, okay, but then you have also the story of the mother, which is even more touching, okay, because how many things you can realize, how many things how many decisions this person is forced to take, and how many things she's renouncing in the name of having a life, and the final fruit of that decision that is having the son. I think it's interesting. I like it, and the end, this final explanation of everything inside the figures. It seems to be also quite. I don't know. I like it, and in this time, I also like this kind of soft story, but also with deep meaning.
Cool, Miriam.
Hi. I agree with Antonio. There are more than one story in that short story. I personally would have kept only the first part, the magical moment of the creation of the paper figures, and left the other two parts. I didn't see any point in having the mother's explanation. It only added a series of events that, as I think Andrea was saying, could have been developed in a new, longer narrative. And it didn't really add anything to the conflict that existed between the two cultures, and more than the two cultures, the growth of a teenager in a new culture that is also a new neighborhood for him. I thought that the creation of the figures was quite good, and I also think that he depicted very well the part of his teenage years when he moved into the new area and he had his first friends who made laugh of him. I thought there was something personal there, and although he didn't explain much, it was vivid and real. And then when I read his biography, and he explained that he had moved from China to the United States at the same age, around 10, then I understood that why these few words felt so real.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a very important theme there, which is the change from kid to adulthood, and how teenagers deal with such conflict, being rejected and laughed at by his peers, and finally accept himself or his duality. And this part of him accepting himself as an adult is not developed at all. He got a girlfriend. He seemed very well with her, but didn't, we didn't see anything there. There was a lot of potential. So I really liked the first two moments, but after that, after the conflict, I didn't like it that much. Thank you.
Okay, Roberto.
I was surprised and I loved it. I loved the story. I loved the animals and the origami, and I thought that there were several topics or things that were very interesting for me, like language, for example. I loved how the author showed how language can be so connected to our emotions, like like when she says that love is something that she she felt here in her speech in a way, and then the word in Chinese, I, or I don't know how to pronounce it, she could feel that in her heart. I love language and all those things, and I'm always very intrigued by how that kind of connection between language and memory and emotions and many other things in a neuroscientific kind of way. I think it was very. It's a very complicated thing to really show in a few pages a connection between a parent and their child. But I think that we could see how she loved her son and how he was disconnected from her mother. Also, I think it was very interesting how there was this component of the mother wanting to connect with a feeling of wholeness through her child, and also how she was very selfless. She gave him the space to, like reject her. So I loved it. I think it's very interesting and a lovely story.
Thank you. Jessica?
Yes, I liked it very much. It has an incredible lot of feeling in just a few pages. And I don't know, I suppose it's a sign of very good writing, because I think everybody finished it feeling something, feeling whatever. I mean, feeling something. I have to say, I don't agree with Miriam. The second part of the book, let's say, although the style was different because the mother was writing it, and it seems a bit factual, but it's all part of the same thing. It's just to make you feel all these things, especially as it's narrated from his point of view. We get to find out about the relationship from his point of view, and finally from hers as well. I didn't like the style of that letter. Maybe it's because I do think it was necessary to explain a bit the mother's behavior, even why she gave him so much space, which could be understood in some senses.
Jessica, I think we are losing you. There's some connection issue there.
State of total collapse.
I think we missed part of what you said, the last sentences, because the screen freezes.
The last sentence as well. Just to understand why the mother didn't make more of an effort to get through to the son is explained in her history. In the
I'm afraid we can't hear you nor see you.
Maybe it's the internet connection with her.
Yeah.
Yep. Looks like.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to you later, Jessica, so you can explain what you were saying. Carlos, you will be next.
Okay, thank you. Well, I can see Jessica now. Well, how did you comment? I mean, I like the story. I think it was very touching and very moving, especially with the today's situation where we cannot see our parents. The feeling of, losing touch and not being able to connect with them. It's, I think right now this maybe the film is it has a more effect. I was though a bit surprised. I mean, I didn't see it as a prize-winning story like Hugo, Nebula, and so on. I mean, I think it was a good story, and I liked it and I enjoyed it. But it was like very kind of I don't know if to call it the black and white, but very. There's only like one way of reading into it. I mean, he puts everything in place so that you can feel well, you feel like the kid is an asshole when he's a teenager, and you feel like at the end, the contrast with his mother, and her mother will have a very difficult life and so on. It's kind of a Hollywood movie, like it's everything falls in place to send the same message. And for that case, I think it lacks a little bit of complexity and different points of view. That's it.
Okay, thank you. It seems that we're having some connection issues today with some of you. Ale, you could be next.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I hope my connection is well.
Yeah.
So I love the story. I think it's one of the best stories that I've ever read, from my opinion. It was so like emotional from the beginning when the animals start moving. You start feeling some things. You start reminding your childhood with your toys and how you interacted with them, and then it jumps the emotion into hate for the boy. You kind of understand, and you kind of understand that he's trying to fit into a new society. That part of the middle of the story when the boy is a teenager and he goes into university, when the mother dies when he's on an airplane, that's like, what the fuck. And so that now you're hating the boy, and now at the end you start the story is told with the vision of the mother. And when they told about how the mother was now in a hospital in a bed, I was feeling like, is this necessary? Is this so easy? But at the end, I think it's necessary because it makes you read the story of her life, how she writes everything into the papers. This, like, the message kind of comes to the boy with the tiger, and the tiger moves towards the boy and kind of shows the letter. And so I think it's and it has a lot of themes here, from language to culture to your relationship with your family, childhood, animals, also that your relationship with animals. So overall is that I loved it. I love the story.
Good, thank you. Angela?
Yes, I also like the story. Like, I like how it was like beautiful, emotional, original, because the origami. I mean, I agree with everyone, and also I like the style. It was so easy to read and to complain, to understand. So in general, I've liked. I mean, I have the same opinion than the others. So like. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Eloisa?
Sorry. I really like it. I think it was really moving. At the beginning, I don't know if I'm the only one that I thought it, because it won a lot of Nebula and all these science fiction prizes. I thought that the mother, it was an intelligent artificial or a robot, something like that. I was looking for that because the father found her in a catalog. At the beginning, I didn't think it was a human being. Obviously, as soon as I started to read more and more, I realized that yes, she was a human being. I really like the part of the origami, like everybody says. I think it gives a touch of fantasy that is really nice. Yeah, engage you in the story. I like that the author doesn't need to explain you a lot and doesn't give you a lot of description, but you can feel all the feelings of the different characters. Obviously, most people think that the teenager is a bit cruel, but not only the teenager, because the neighbors were cruel as well, and the father wasn't that great as well. And you can feel that how alone was the woman, and how, I don't know, at the end, I feel that is even saddest, the story, because all the situation, all the background, and all the story at the end, and the mother basically dies alone, almost alone. Yeah, I think it was really moving. I really like it. I really love it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Before we continue, because someone is asking me, all the discussions that we do are recorded. I'm planning of taking little pieces of it and do a longer video with it, mounting them. If anyone has a problem with this and doesn't want to be recorded, just let me know and I will stop. Okay? Okay, thank you. Nelida, you could be next. Demote, we can hear you.
Sorry. Okay, I like the story. I like the point of view, which is more innocence and candid at the start, no, like relate with the child infants, with all this origami and the toys that were made out of paper. And he just had this kind of toys. But I also like then from my point of view, the cruel view from this child, from the son, because he's like he remembers that his father chose his mother out of a catalog. Then he told her that he wants to be like included in this American society, and he doesn't care about his mother's feelings really. He wants real toys and this kind of stuff, which is more important maybe at those ages than his mother's feelings. And what, more or less about all the other opinions is more or less about what you have said. But yeah, I actually like it. I find it easy to read too.
Okay, thank you. And Mo, last but not least.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's the type of story that I like, about family relationships and that sort of thing. I thought it was very realistic, the way that the characters are written and the relationship, well, between any parent and child, but especially between a immigrant, I guess, or I don't know how to describe someone who's been bought, basically. But for all intents and purposes, an immigrant and the first generation and second generation immigrants, I think it's kind of a typical relationship, or at least not an unusual relationship that the narrator and the mom have. I had a similar reaction to Ale at the end, with the mom dying in the hospital, and I was like, for me that was a little bit too cliche, like, or too easy of an ending. I mean, all stories are emotionally manipulative, but that felt a little bit too easy to me. Like, I wish they had done something a bit more original. But yeah, overall, I liked it. I thought it was well written. Good story.
Okay. I liked it a lot. It wasn't at all what I expected, but I enjoyed reading it. It was very emotional. For any of us who have lost one of their parents, it's even more emotional because of the thing, all the moments you regret and all the things that you could have done differently if you could go back in time regarding the relationship with the person you have lost. And other than the emotional part, I think it's a good portrait about not only immigration, but also to understand the importance of knowing where someone is coming from. And I'm not talking geographically only, but also the background of their lives. Seems that when we understand the background of someone, when we put ourselves in their shoes for a second, and if we can understand their motivations and empathize with them, everything changes. This is something that doesn't happen often, but when it happens, it's because we have known something of the other people that makes them more humans for us. In this sense, I think that the story talks about this quite well. All right, so we can talk freely now that we have finished the round.
I have to say, can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can hear you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
As long as I don't talk too much, you can hear me. I have to say that I loved the tiger behind you. I can't remember his name, but
Yeah.
the description of even his personality. You know, this tiger had a certain personality, and I thought he was wonderful. And this idea of breathing life into, I mean, this mother, she seems to have so much life that she can't give to her son, so much love that she can breathe it into paper animals. And even when dead, you know, she seems to have something that she couldn't do in her life. She does from wherever that place is called, the Chinese celebrate on New Year's, and it's all very, very emotional.
Yeah, for me also the tiger is like in the first part is the main or one of the main characters. We also have the chance to see how it reacts to, for example, when the shark is created and it sinks and it dies. We also have the point of view of the tiger. We also with the buffalo, and that's the first thing that ties you with the story, the tiger.
It's also that the tiger, the animals, bring him to life, because at the end of the story, he comes back to his mother thanks again to the paper animals next to them. So these magic moments are special in the story, which I didn't get very well. Perhaps you can tell me about it. Is it seems that all this origami culture was originated in the village of the mother, and that the whole village had some magic connected to this creation, to this festival. Did I understand well? What do you recall about that?
Yeah, I think so. But I would like to learn more about the character of the mother, because it's true that he explained a bit about his past and everything. But I agree that part. He said that yes, she learned this ability from her village, but it's like so casual, like he doesn't explain more. And I would really like to to read a more extended story only about the mother, like not only the letter but more, and about how she fits in the United States, because we only know the relationship between her son and her, but we don't know what she's doing besides, I don't know, taking care of the son.
The village she comes from seems, it reminded me of Cien Años de Soledad and Macondo. It's just a strange village where strange things happen that everybody thinks are normal. You know, you blow life into some birds and they fly around. It's just things that in her village were normal, and it reminded me of that book.
Yeah, now that you say it, there's some correlation there between the two cities. You were commenting before where we couldn't hear you, Jessica, that why the mother wasn't trying to reach more to her son, and that was explained on the second part. But I don't see it. Why do you think that it was explained later?
Well, it was explained, as you just said yourself. If you know where somebody comes from, you understand their actions. And she was very young. She was uneducated. She didn't know how to behave in this new society. There was all these things. I mean, she had no, I don't know, savoir faire, let's say. You know, she had no other.
I think, Jessica, if you disconnect your camera, maybe you will have enough bandwidth for at least to talk. That's a suggestion.
We lost her again.
Yeah, because the screen freezes and then we can't hear you. Maybe if you disconnect the camera for a while. I don't know.
Now what?
Okay.
Perhaps it's the cat.
But can you hear us right, Jessica? Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's just where I'm sitting. I'm sort of far away from my router, and my connection is shite, and my computer is shite. So anyway.
Okay, yeah, but it made sense what you were saying, that understanding her background and where she's coming from kind of explain the way she behaves to her son.
I think it also explains a little bit also why she was so isolated, because I mean, in the US, in Massachusetts, there's I don't know, many thousands of Chinese people, but maybe because she had this background and she didn't mingle with people outside her family, that also, I guess, reinforced her isolation in the city.
Yeah, there are several factors. Not only that she's isolated, first because of her culture, okay. Second, before being misplaced in a different country, different culture, not knowing the language, and of course, her past is the main. I mean, for me, in my opinion, is the main reason she behaves like that. Okay, she was mistreated in the past. She's coming from a poor family, poor circumstances. Okay, and she's somehow forced to be married. Okay, by the circumstances, by herself even, but eventually she's lucky because since that the husband is somehow nice with her, but we cannot find that husband has chosen her in a catalog, so a sort of catalog. So it's quite complicated because she's never been allowed to love anyone until she gave birth to her son. Okay. So that's also maybe it's the very first moment she was really able to be more open, more human, is when she became a mom. She became a mother, and I think it's also very relevant for her. But she's somehow hiding her motherhood. Okay, she's only being a mother with her son. I don't know. I think it's also this relationship is very, very particular because it's only between two people. The parent is not present very much, or is not very clear, because even the boy doesn't seem to love much to his father. He respect him, but the relationship with the mother, through this display with the figures, etc. It's what they makes them a quite interesting connection.
You say she's only allowed to love when she has her son, and then her son ends up hurting her very badly because
she has only allowed herself to love.
Yeah,
Okay.
and she tries to love her son, and he rejects her love when he's a teenager. So
it's a lack of communication, but she loves him.
Oh, I know.
The thing is that
know.
maybe he's not giving love back because of, obviously the cultural differences are still stronger than the motherhood or mother-son relationship. Okay, here, not knowing the culture, also, I don't know, maybe the American society is forcing the boy to refuse his Chinese heritage. Okay, and that's the reason maybe it's putting some limits between the love from the boy to the mother, not the other way, because it's very obvious that the love was there. But maybe the mother was not expressing her love very well to the boy. Okay, only through these figures. It seems to be a very poetic MacGuffin in the story.
Yeah, well, she couldn't express the love because she couldn't talk with the guy, so that was the problem. She was kind of waiting for him to grow up.
I have some doubt if she couldn't, or she wasn't willing to. She was not willing to express. Okay, she was somehow limiting the expression of the love because, I don't know, some issues he's bringing from the past.
Yeah, well,
that's a question. I don't have clear.
Yeah.
Maybe some of you have a theory about that.
At a certain moment, she says that by the time she was able to manage the language and she could communicate verbally, boy was not interested in what was she saying.
Mm-hmm.
And the explanations that you were giving about the relationship between the family, the members of the family, seem short to me. I'm feeling really old. Any family goes through that period where teenagers of any culture reject their parents, and they don't relate to them as people till they are much older. And I'm not telling you 20 or 21, even older.
Mm-hmm.
Their mom or father is just a person that is taken for granted. And their only relationship that exists is in connection to their games and activities. They are relevant or significant there. So that's the reason why the father was absent. Or later on, they can say that they know them as adults. And well, this message is also in the book, and Andrea has also said it. Once they're gone, that is when you realize that you wanted to know them, to meet them. The book relies a lot on certain cliches that still exist, and they are so visible that I'm surprised that are not mentioned here, such as women can only fulfill themselves if they are not integrated in the role as mothers. This woman exists only because she's a mother. She doesn't even exist as a woman or a partner. The boy doesn't allow her to exist if it's not integrated in her games. And she has to die at an early age so that she can finally communicate certain things through paper. And it's only the girlfriend who sets the paper figures on the shelves so he can finally start to see them. He doesn't reach them. It's that suddenly one of them falls into his lap. I mean, it's a series of cliches that they really exist nowadays that It doesn't need to be a Chinese woman from a lower background that cannot communicate. It's any mother goes through that stage of being only as a mother, and you probably not have experienced this when you take your kids to school, that you stop being your name and you become the mom or the dad of that person. And this lasts for so many years that some parents don't even go over that stage because some children never go or reach them to that stage. So feeling old.
One
I
thing,
agree.
I agree with you, Miriam, about the age gap. Obviously, parents and teenagers, they have conflicts, obviously. But I think there was another barrier. I think the language barrier was a barrier because the mother didn't speak English. And the boy
spoke Chinese. The boy spoke Chinese.
Yeah, but
he could communicate in Chinese.
Yeah,
he
but the boy
refused
to speak in Chinese when he started to grow up. And because he had this argument with this boy, and he started to feel different from the society where he belongs to, he wanted to belong to, and he's
the one. He forbid the language in the home. He forbid her mother to communicate. He said, no more Chinese in the home.
Yeah,
and that's very typical of teenagers imposing on their parents.
Yeah, that's why
and the father did not help her. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm agree with you. I think that not only there's the problem like normal teenagers and parents, obviously they have arguments. Also, they couldn't communicate because the mother couldn't speak English, and the boy refused to speak in Chinese to her. And I think that was even aggravate the situation. And there's another thing, I don't know if I've understood properly, when she's telling her story, when it's a story in China, she said that she worked in a house and the woman, the boss, told her that she couldn't speak in English because she's trying to learn English. And she said, why you're learning English? You shouldn't learn English. I think maybe that as well influence her to in the future try to don't speak English or try to force herself to don't lose her heritage and try to speak all the time Chinese. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. I think that was also something that influenced her.
Yeah, I think one of the main themes in the story is the connection of your mother tongue with your feelings. And for example, she says in the note, when you said your first words to me in Chinese, they had the same accent as my mother and me, I cried for hours. So like she feels now a lot of things. She started remembering her past. He starts feeling at home finally. So yeah, maybe she could speak English. Maybe she could, but it wasn't gonna be the same. She wants to speak with her family, not with a stranger or with another person.
Your comment reminds me that nowadays most of us have a monolingual approach to our upbringing. We identify ourselves with one language and we feel foreign to the other. But the truth is that families with different backgrounds and different cultures grow within a mixture and very chaotic use of the different languages. In a family of life, two kids will communicate between themselves in one language, and two with the other one with another language, and from the parents in between them in a different language, and then towards the children in another language. So this clear-cut image that we have, that language is emotion, and emotion is one language, is the result of growing up in a monolingual culture. Once you break that barrier, you understand that your emotions can be expressed differently, as the way you dress differently for different situations. And it's surprising how you react to different situations, the language that you use, and the register that you use. In the same way that when you are with friends, you dress in one way and use certain slang. When you communicate at work, you dress differently and use another register. The variety happens with language. And that's something I wanted to share with Roberto, because he says that he's very fond of languages. But I would like to, be more, how do you say, science fiction here, or project a reality that is happening in many homes and that everybody is ignoring, that our identity is connected to our different experiences in life, like this boy, this woman, and also to the different languages that we grow up with. We are not, our music now is fusion. Our cuisine is also fusion. You have Peruvian and Japanese cuisine as acceptable as Chinese American or Italian American, but we still think that the true identity comes from one single language, and that our true emotions can only be expressed with one language. And I think that we are evolving, and in the future will be different. But anyway, if anyone wants to comment on that, it's another subject for discussion. It can be a long one.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I normally find very interesting these stories about the mixing of two very different cultures, like American and Chinese. And also about the boy, I mean, I understand that he wants to fit into the American society so badly, even though I think he's so wrong to reject this part of the culture of her mother. That, I mean, I would think it's very amazing to have, like, since you are a child, to being able to learn two different languages and two different cultures. But of course, as Mo said before, I think this is a very normal situation in this kind of families. And also, I wanna add about ask you about the relationship between the figure of the father in this whole story, because I found that the child was so biased towards his father, because he judged his mother because he doesn't understand why he accepts to be in the catalog, but he doesn't question why the father choose a woman in a catalog. So the figure of the father and how he fits in the story, that's also very intriguing and not very well explained.
Yeah, I agree. It somehow looks like the boy blames the mother for being in that catalog, but is not blaming the father for making use of it. So obviously, we understand the reason, but it's also true that we understand the reasons the mother is in the catalog, okay? Because she's forced by the circumstances. It's the only way out she has. But we don't know the reasons that brings the father to use the catalog, okay? It's not to forgive him, it's just to understand it. I think it could be also interesting, but obviously the story is more focused on this relationship, mother and son.
Yes, I mean, in fact, I think the father is almost not even a character. He just a way for the story to take place. But well, I would say for the author, it doesn't matter.
It's just something needs to be there because obviously there is a son, and the reason for the mother to be in America is the father, but it's only an excuse for the story. This could be a character. It would be worth it if the story would be a book or longer. novel,
Mhm.
would be interested in developing that character, because I think could give us much more information.
Yes, if the
Installation.
story hasn't been focused on the relationship between the mother and the son, which is the main story, then we will have known more about the father, which would have been interesting because of his personality, the real bit we see of it, and the decisions he takes, he makes, even in the past, the ones that he made, like for example buying someone on a catalog. But the real story is the one between the mother and the son, and it's I think it's the best story to tell, because it's much more interesting, I guess, than what could have been between the father and the boy. The reason I think this is that because the conflict between the mother and the son is not the regular conflict, intergenerational conflict between parents and kids, but it's a crash of civilizations. There's two different cultures living in the same house that becomes a conflict. That's the real story for me there.
I would say that more than conflict, isolation is the main. The father went to the catalog because he was isolated from his own culture. He doesn't relate to his family as a person. The woman was isolated in her childhood. She is isolated in the new culture until she has a baby where she can communicate, but then she's again isolated as the boy grows up. The fool feels isolated and alienated when he tries to fit into the new society. So yeah, isolation plays a big role here.
One question. The father is not like American Chinese, right? It's not Chinese at all.
No, American. I think it's American.
It's fully American. I don't know, at some point he was on military. That's the reason he's able to work out.
Yeah, that's why the kid is it's half and half. It's a mix of Chinese and American, Caucasian, if you want, or white.
The father is older than her, much older than her. Apart from the fact that she's a young girl, I saw him as much older man.
I cannot hear you.
We cannot hear you.
In the sense that he doesn't focus his.
We couldn't hear you very well.
Okay.
It's definitely the cat.
Yeah.
I see there's a very interesting and realistic part of the story in terms of the Chinese family dysfunction, because I have several friends who are Chinese, or maybe Spanish and Chinese, or their parents are from China, and I see that there is tendency that there is always a language barrier. Sometimes there is a language barrier because Chinese parents work a lot, and then their children are brought up by Spanish people, like a nanny, or maybe they learn Spanish in school. Maybe their relationship with their parents is it tends to be very cold. Like, I have several friends who cannot speak Chinese, or at least properly, and their parents cannot speak Spanish. So their interactions are very complicated. I mean, I have a friend, and she tells me that she doesn't like talking to her parents because she cannot speak Chinese, and she feels ashamed. And also, she doesn't really know her parents' names. Like, she calls them mom and dad, and in Chinese, but then she cannot really know like for sure their names. She cannot even write them. She says that she has she's like a 5-year-old when she speaks Chinese, and she avoids talking to her parents, and she doesn't remember ever hugging them. She was raised by her grandmother in China until she was, I think, 3 years old, and then her father went to China, and she met her father in a way for the first time when he went to China to pick her up and bring her to Spain, and then she re-met her older sister and her mother. So there is, and also I have another friend, and he has like a very similar story, and it's even more interesting because he doesn't speak Chinese at all, and his parents don't speak Spanish at all. So I see like this tendency, like there is like a Chinese family dysfunction that is very similar between families. So I think in the story we can see a lot of the mother in terms of her love for her son, and there is more sweetness in a way than maybe in like real life Chinese families that have these relationships. I mean, of course, they love their sons and daughters, but maybe we cannot see that sweetness or that wanting, that longing, right, for their daughters. So I think that part was very realistic. Like I think Mo, you mentioned that, right? Like that realistic family dynamic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seemed very realistic to me, the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And both of their reactions to what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very realistic, not only for the Chinese culture, but for other immigrants from Asia mostly, which is the ones that I know close. I used to work in a Korean company, and I always tell the story about the second generation immigrants that were my coworkers, but whose parents immigrated from Korea to Spain, and there was an abyss between them. Like, it was not only a language thing, because the people I used to work with, which were like young people, had studied and went to the university here in Spain, so they speak the Spanish as me. Their entire understanding of the culture, of the Korean culture and the Spanish one, was something that their parents didn't have. And there was a conflict that wasn't really a conflict, because at the end of the day, the younger generation ends up doing what the older generation wants, at least in the cases that I know. But there was a barrier there between them. And sometimes the culture pressure, the pushing from the families and from the environment they grow up, is so hard, so intense, that they end up taking decisions like going back to Korea and leaving everything behind. And well, it's hard for them.
I think we don't need to go so far. Although the fact of these cultures that are so distant and cannot communicate is extreme. We just need to think of our grandparents or the generations that came to Spain from the rural areas to the big cities, were men who stayed in the villages as farmers, never played with their kids, never hugged them, parents and children. And this was here in our society, 40 years ago. And when the children came into the city, they totally rejected the life in the village, or they idealized it totally. The parents did not understand why their kids enjoyed the city, the pollution, the noise, the discos. The kids could not survive, understand their parents, their ways of thinking, their narrow-mindedness. So again, yes, this book it projects, it dimensions the realities that we have lived and live in our society, but for somehow we either forget about them or they are not so near to us day to day, and we need, a book to remind us of these clashes between generations and culture and ways of thinking between the younger and the older generations.
But I don't think that's the focus of the short story. I think the focus is the difference between cultures, the culture shock, as people call it. The difference between an Asiatic culture and the American capitalist culture has nothing to do with my grandparents being from a small village. It's not. I think it's not in the same scale. I think the racism also plays a hand here. I think stereotypes also come in, like China. If you come from China, you have to be uneducated. You don't learn English because you can't, because you don't try. You're closed-minded. You are rural, and I think it's much deeper of an issue than just people coming from different backgrounds or different places of birth or different economic status. I think it has more to do with this habit as humans have of thinking of our country and our nation as ours and the other people as enemies, as foreigners, as outsiders. I think that's the difference. I think that's what the author is trying to talk about in this short story, about how these prejudices are so deep that even a relationship between a mother and his son, who could be a magical and lovable, a beautiful thing, can be ruined because of these things. Because I think we can all agree that if the main character wasn't influenced by American dismissal of Chinese culture, he wouldn't have that distant or dysfunctional relationship with his mother. I think we can all agree on that. It's not his personality, is not that his mother can't communicate with him, it's just prejudices that a child is vulnerable to. That's what I think, at least.
Yeah, and I think in that way, I really like the scene when the neighbors visit them. It's very short, but it's so like relevant, I think, for the story. Like only with the question, "What's your name?" "My name is Jack." Ah, that's not very Chinese to you. I mean, only these 3 lines. I mean, I think they were amazing.
The fact that is Chinese culture enhances all the clash, and I think it's written because the author is also of Chinese origin, and he felt the need to share his experience with us. But on the other hand, I think that he's using a lot of cliches and to make. You're right, there's not the same dimension between having your parents from the same country, but Andalusian people who immigrated to certain cities in Spain have been always looked down upon them and have not been accepted, and they have kept their culture. But this is not good sales in any story because it's our daily life and we think that's normal. So if this book got a prize, I think it's because the author pictured very deep emotions and very real feelings in brief words, but also because it used all these figures, all this culture to express something that it really happens in every day, in all society, in all our neighborhoods.
I think the issue with the culture, though, it also comes into play because the kids have I guess, a materialistic way of looking at things, and this this Chinese kid has paper toys. Had he been a stinkingly rich Chinese with a PlayStation 17 and other things, it wouldn't be an issue. It's the same way in Spain. In Spain, we have a problem with the immigrants that are poor. The millionaires that live in Marbella, they're not immigrants. They're something else. So, I mean, I guess this is something that comes into play only when you feel above the other person.
Yeah, that's true. It's all about prejudices. If you walk down the street on Torrevieja in Alicante, you don't think that an elderly man coming from Germany is going to rob you. But if you go around in Ceuta and there's a guy from Morocco, a young guy from Morocco, you're going to think that he's going to mug you, because that's our prejudices. That's what we believe people are, and that's what we reduce many details such as culture or age or sex or a lot of different things, or socioeconomic stages. We reduce people to that, and we reduce all those characteristics to how are they going to relate to me? Is that this person more like me or different? So I think that's what conditions us in favor or against someone. All those things.
Yes, it's these imaginary groups that we make where we classify people into different groups, and then we say they are like me or they are not like me. Yes, but it's also what Carlos said, which is something that I hadn't think about when I was reading the story, but it's very clear now after he said it, which is that there's also a social classes issue here, which is like the kid is poorer than his friend, the one that goes to visit him at home, and this is also a reason for conflict. This is not only we belong in different classifications, different categories. It's also how money and social class conditions how we see the people surrounding us.
And in fact,
they were poorer than the other.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Mo, they were saying?
Oh, I don't think they were poorer than the other family. They were both going to the same school, so presumably they're in the same neighborhood, the same whatever. But I just think that the father was not very involved, so it didn't occur to him to buy toys. Like, that's something to do with the child, so that was the mother's responsibility. And she grew up how she grew up, so she's not gonna know or run down to Toys R Us and pick up a Star Wars figurine. She made him the paper because she wanted to make the connection, and because that's what she knew. Because when the boy gets upset about it, the father goes out and buys him all these Star Wars toys. But
That's
I definitely
right.
think there's a class element. I mean, if the mom had come from an upper class Chinese family and she was, like I think Carlos was saying, she was an expat instead of an immigrant, then maybe the other people would have been more accepting of her if she spoke, perfect English and had been educated in a private school or whatever. I think she still would have encountered a lot of prejudice, but maybe she would have been more accepted in the community.
Yeah, nowadays there are a lot of, for example, a lot of authors like Ken Liu that are descendants from, are half Chinese, half American or American-born Chinese. But the first novel I read about an Asian author was a novel that has become very famous because of the Hollywood movie. That's called Crazy Rich Asians, and has nothing to do with this type of short story because it's so shallow and so unbelievable and so cheesy, but I love it. It's so cool. And it's mainly humor directed at laughing about all these elite Asian people who have more money than they can spend in 3 lifetimes. And I found it very funny because it opens up with a very meaningful scene that in the movie it was made perfect. I think you can find the scene on YouTube. But 2 main characters are in England, and it's a very rainy night, and they need to get to their hotel, and they have an upper class hotel that's one of the best in, I think they are in London, one of the best hotels in London. And the manager that is currently there doesn't want to let them in because they're Chinese and they're soaky because of the rain. Their clothes don't look very, very good. And even though they have a reservation for like 3 suites in the hotel, he dismisses them because he thinks they're lying, and he laughs at their face. So they make a phone call and they buy the entire hotel. And the first thing they do is fire that manager that was racist to them because they were Chinese. Why? Because they want to make clear that they're not like the Chinese people from the mainland, as everyone thinks of them as immigrants, but they're upscale Singaporeans. So that sets the whole tone of the novel, and it illustrates this point because even people from Singapore or China know that the Western world has this idea of them as immigrants, as poorer, and it doesn't always match with reality because they're just like us. They have a whole lot of social classes, different backgrounds. We don't have to categorize them just for being from a different race.
So do you recommend it, the book and the movie? Because I
laughed so hard.
I watched the trailer and I thought it has so many cliches, like the typical Asian mother.
So funny.
But do you recommend it?
Yeah, and the movie was also very good because the things they changed, they made the story a bit more simple, but it was very, very good. I think it was a very good movie adaptation. Maybe the most faithful one I've ever seen, and the actors were very good. I really recommend it. I love so hard those books, but they're cheesy, they're tacky, they're unbelievable, they're exaggerating, but they're so cool. They're my
and now we're talking about recommendation. I was thinking regarding to the part of when she's forced to marry and go to America. I read a book called Buddha in the Attic. It's more serious, obviously, than. I really like that book. It was very shocking. It was like from the point of view of a lot of Japanese women who came from very different situations and moved to America to marry, in this case, Japanese men. But it was very shocking in a way. So I really recommend it.
Yeah, we also read a book recently that its main character was also a Chinese immigrant woman. It was preparation for the next life. And it showed it very well, right?
Yeah, I didn't like preparation for the next life so much, but this question was so good that I ended up liking it a little bit more than I originally thought. And it talks also about how hard for poor Chinese immigrants in the States the entire thing is, which is sad and hard.
Yeah, it's hard to read, but maybe we need to know more about it because to become more conscious of it, because we have less immigrants, so it's weirder for us, but it also happens here.
We also read a couple months ago Halsey Street, which is also the same theme. It's a mixed family. The dad is American and the mom is an immigrant from Dominican Republic. And it's about the relationship between the mother and the daughter who's growing up in this American society. The story reminded me a lot of that as well, similar themes and everything. So it's been a common theme, I guess, in our book club
like
for a while.
these type of stories.
There are many million of families like that in the US, for sure. I mean, that's a very, very common situation.
Mm.
Yeah, in the paper menagerie, she doesn't immigrate by choice. She's forced to do it, as many immigrants that do it because of living under the poverty limits in their original countries. There are other immigrants that go to different cultures because they like the culture, because they like their people, or because they have a job there, or for other reasons. But when you do it forced to do so, the entire immigration process is different, which is what happens to the main character in this story. Her son doesn't allow her to talk in Chinese, but she doesn't learn English. She doesn't try to speak in English neither. Like, she just, or either doesn't want to, or doesn't know how, doesn't put enough effort into it. I don't know. But she...
How is she gonna learn English? Like, she's at home all day. She's not allowed, I guess, to get a job. She's not, I mean, it's a situation that happens, not so much anymore, but it happened a lot in the US just even recently, that families would move and the father would go out and get a job so he would learn English because he had to. And he was interacting with people, and the mom is supposed to stay home and take care of the kids. And so who is she going to speak English to? How is she going to learn English from? And I get the impression that this story is set in like what, the late 70s, early 80s, when Star Wars came out, I'm guessing. So she's not going to hop on the internet and learn English.
I have a question.
I don't think.
The husband did not speak Chinese, right?
No, I don't think so.
No. He has also a translator when he met her.
Why doesn't he learn Chinese?
Yeah, exactly.
Later, I don't know, but that's then she would be even more isolated if she cannot talk even at home in Chinese. Maybe that's why she built this little bubble with her son. Which, as I mentioned before, I think to me it's a bit strange because, I mean, there's tons of Chinese people in the US, so it's very common for immigrants to just make their groups, and even, I mean, maybe they don't learn English, but they speak in their own language with each other. So this situation is it's kind of I don't know, uncommon.
I don't think that this is an uncommon situation. If you go abroad yourselves, you'll find speaking to Italians and making friends with them. But you will not easily make friends with any other group of people. That is, there are certain groups of people and cultures that they are not social. They don't tend to meet. South Americans meet and socialize. Pakistani women, you will never see them socializing on the streets with people from other cultures. So part of the role of the woman, of the traditional woman, is to stay at home, not to be in contact with the dangers of the city. To work in Germany in the 60s in Spain, came back after 4 years working there without being able to pronounce a single word of German, which means that once you are isolated in your community or in your home or in your family, there's no way you can learn a language. But even if you tried, you would find yourself that any lacking of a schooling at an early age really hinders that process. If you try to make somebody learn Spanish or English from a different language, either they have a good ear or they just are unable to register, the differences between such languages, Arabic, Spanish, Chinese. So I don't think it was a lack of wanting, or again, she kept her traditional role.
I'm not assuming any reason, but I mean, even now, but for sure in the 70s, the father did nothing about the kid. He didn't go shopping for clothes for him. He didn't buy the food. He didn't cook. He didn't go to school, and he didn't take him to the doctor. So I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying I don't have no idea what the reasons were, but for me, it's really strange that they had such a tight bubble around her, because I mean, I'm sure the guy did nothing. I mean, he must be a very nice guy, but in the 70s, I doubt very much that the father did anything about the kid.
Which is even worse, a father who picks up a woman from a catalog who doesn't speak the language. I mean, what is the intention to communicate? Honestly, I think that he only wanted one use for his wife, and that was not speaking with her.
Yeah, in some way, he also wanted to fit in the society. He also wanted a wife. And maybe he was older and he couldn't, and he picked a woman in a catalog, which is super crazy. But
I'm sure I mean, he had let's say it takes a toll on his social image to say, oh, I got married because I got a wife through a catalog. So I would guess he didn't do it because that's his choice either. Maybe he didn't find any other option, because I'm sure everybody looked at him in a very negative way because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And even more so in the 70s.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can only guess at the father's motivation, but I guess it was he wanted somebody to cook and clean and have a kid and take care of the child, and he didn't feel like he could do it any other way. And he has complete control over her because she's completely dependent on him, even more than an American woman would be.
Exactly, because if he wants them, they fit in society, then she fit in society, he will help her to fit in society, teaching her the language, trying to help her to socialize with other people, showing her his wall, but he didn't care. I think he didn't care. He wanted her to have a home, yes, cooking, taking care of the kid, and that's all. As Miriam said, it's very difficult when you go into another country and you don't have to work or you go to school. It's very difficult to socialize with people, and because you don't have the opportunity to socialize with other people, and that way you can learn the language. It's a vicious circle. Is a circle? Yes, because you can socialize, you don't learn the language, and the only thing that you can do is try to fit with people than the same country as you. And she didn't even do that because she didn't speak with Chinese people. I think that's horrible. The situation, I think, is very bad.
And also, if she had met any other Chinese women, they would probably have been from different areas and would have been speaking different Chinese, and they wouldn't have been able to understand each other. So
yeah,
it's a pity that the story, the background of the father is not developed. I know it's not relevant to the story, but the main point is the magic connection through the figures between mother and child. But there's certainly a good thread to follow there. I can see there are new visitors to our group, but they haven't said anything. I'm wondering if they can hear us or not.
I'm sorry, I haven't said anything because I didn't want to interrupt what you were saying.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a great opportunity to be able to read in English and talk in English and discuss a book in English. It's lovely. I would have liked to read the book, but I got the notice yesterday, so I didn't have time. I mean, I couldn't, but next time I will. And yeah, very interesting what you're talking about. Mm-hmm.
It's a very short story, and you.
Yeah. I was going to say it's a short story. It's not a book.
Yeah, I know. I was able to download both of them, but I didn't have time because I have work to do, so I couldn't. But next time I will, and this works really well.
Come on. I guess that now when you read it, you'll see 1,000 images connected while you're reading.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I started reading it and I think it's very interesting, but I also heard that there is a film. Is there a film? You were saying Eu de la Calle, that there is like an adaptation or something, or
Oh
which
no,
is when
it's
I
a
got
different.
in the chat.
It's a different novel. It's
Which one is
about
it?
a different novel, but it was also by an Asian author.
Okay,
That's why I brought it up.
So okay, thank you. I just wanted to say hello, so you can go on
Hello.
discussing. Okay.
Hello.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
I was
Okay.
going to ask. Go ahead.
No, sorry. Please continue.
I was going to ask if somebody had read any other stories or novels by this author, because of me, I had not even heard his name. It was the first time I heard about him.
No, I only knew his name from being a translator of Chinese science fiction, but I hadn't read any of his other original fiction.
And in fact,
But
this is a short story integrated in a book of short stories. So when you buy the Paper Menagerie, it's a collection of different stories. And from the reviews that I heard, this is the most popular and the favorite for most people.
I found out that he has a novel trilogy started. That its first installment, its first novel, won also the Nebula Prize, the science fiction prize that was also won by this short story, or it was a finalist or something like that, and it's called The Grace of Kings. It's from 2016.
I was curious because this was let's say, cataloged as a science fiction novel, which I think many of us didn't quite feel it was that. So I'm curious about reading something that is, or that I would consider science fiction from him. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I like this story, and I think I'm curious to see some of science fiction work by him.
Yeah, we discussed one of his works 1 year ago in Ciervo Blanco, the one that was called something, the man that could have changed history or something like that, but we discussed it in French, so I couldn't go. So I don't know, and I didn't read the story.
Trop difficile.
Yeah, and the organizer that made the discussion was very excited about this author. So I guess that he was well known in certain circles since that time by now.
Yeah, he sure seems interesting because there are not many authors I know that also translate novels and even from his own country of birth. So I think it makes him more interesting for him to have translated The Three-Body Problem to English. I would like to read another novel of him. But apart from that one, The Grace of Kings, I don't know if he has written anything else, like in novel form, not short story.
More newcomers? Adrian?
Oh, and I just found out, I don't know why, but I found out that he's a Star Wars fan, and he has written non-fiction books for Disney about Star Wars. So that's why the Star Wars reference there about the toys. That may be it.
Yeah, makes sense.
So there's a lot of autobiography in the short story.
That is called product placement. That is forbidden.
Product placement. Maybe this story was before he wrote for Disney, I think. But Star Wars is pop culture now, so I don't think it counts. If he was like, yeah, Star Wars, this product for Disney that you can find in Walmart, it's only $16.99. Well, we can continue the story now. It would have been different.
Talking about good books that connect Chinese culture or that picture Chinese culture and the clash between America and China is the Joy Luck Club. It's not such a new book, but if you haven't read it,
What's the title,
something to
sorry?
recommend. The Joy Luck Club. It's a club of 4 Chinese women who meet.
They meet down,
I don't know, on a weekly basis or a monthly basis to play games to get money because they are busy, their obsession is, their business mind is to get money to fit in or to establish themselves in society. And the story
I was watching because I thought that I have the book actually, but I have La hija del curandero of Amy Chang as well.
Not exactly. This is a really good book. You get the 4 stories of the 4 mothers who meet to.
Yeah, I've read it. It's very good. Amy Chang,
4 daughters of the new generations in America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's the name of the novel again, please?
The Joy. Joy from happiness. Joy, happiness. Yeah. Luck from being lucky. Club.
Okay, thank you. I'll jot it down.
Yeah, and it's in English as well. Although it's been translated and there's a film.
Yes.
Good. Okay, thanks for the recommendation.
Guys, it's time for my second shift, cooking. So I'm afraid I'll have to leave. I'll see you soon, whatever the book is, and if I can make it. All right?
Okay.
Nice to see you today.
Okay, see you.
Bye.
Also, I have a question. Somebody mentioned that this author translated a Chinese novel called The Three-Body Problem. Has anybody read it?
That's correct. Yeah, we all read it. Well, not all, but many of us, because we discussed it not so long ago, a few months ago. And it's I recommend it a lot. It's quite good.
Yeah, also many people read it because it was both in English and Spanish. So
yeah,
people have read it in Spanish, others in English.
But for me, the name, the title, it struck my attention because it's something I studied when I was in university, and that's something that I've. It makes it interesting for me. Just that title.
Yes.
So you probably would like it then.
More than us.
Yeah, you understand it.
What do you mean more?
Yeah.
I liked it a lot. Yeah.
No, it's not that. I also liked it a lot, but I'm actually thinking about reading the second part. But it was because there were people that knew physics in the discussion, especially in the Spanish discussion. I don't know about the English one because I was late. But the the people who understood it really enjoyed the book because they really thought that the physics explanations by the author made sense for a science fiction novel. So they enjoyed it.
Yeah, it seems that most of the theoretical explanation that he gives in the books about the phenomena that is happening in the novel makes sense. I mean, they are fantasy, it's science fiction. He's creating all these worlds and happenings that are not real, of course, but are based on real physics, on real science. Angela, who just left, is a physicist, I think, and was explaining some of the stuff that was in the book. and apparently it's good science in the book. Like the technical explanations make sense.
About the three-body problem, I recently found out it was a trilogy originally, but I just found out that it's going to be published a fourth part, but
Wow.
it's not written by the author. It's a Chinese fan fiction.
Really?
Oh, wow. Yeah, but then it's not the same. If it's fan fiction,
Yeah, but the
I
thing
love
is,
craft.
they even got Ken Liu to translate it again, so I guess it might be good. But I really found it funny to see that it was a Chinese fan fiction.
yeah, I said that I was
That's
going
cool.
to read the second part now on these days of quarantine because of having more time, but I didn't find the time to do it. But everybody at the discussion recommended to read the second part. They said that it was better than the first one.
Yeah, the dangerous thing is they didn't say anything about the third part, so you're like,
Yeah.
well, this can end badly, but
Yeah.
Third parts always normally are.
yeah, but there are exceptions. We can hope.
Third parts?
Yeah. I don't know. I can think of examples. For example, Crazy Rich Asians. The third part of Crazy Rich Asians was very good, but because the other novels are also trashy, so you don't expect much.
Are you kidding? It's a trilogy.
What? Yeah, it's a trilogy. Yeah, I didn't say
watch
so.
The movie.
And I would read 7 books or 8 about those characters because they're just so cool. But yeah, it's the only one of my favorite novels that is very trashy. But I recommend it, even if it's not high literary fiction of the type we read here, courtesy of Adrián, most times.
Sometimes, like some of my choices have been very, very bad. Like actually, if I had to choose a good book, I will ask some of the other organizers, like Andrea, for example, because my taste hasn't been the best so far. Well, sometimes.
Well, you chose Preparation for the Next Life, and you didn't like that one. So
yeah, but that one at least was okay. Like the style, the narrative styles, the topics, the themes, it was quality somehow, even if I didn't enjoy it much. But there are some other books that I have chosen that are like I'm remembering that I went to book clubs convention in Burgos, that they were inviting book clubs from all over Spain to go to Burgos and meet there and give a speech and throw some ideas and blah blah. And some people approached me saying, "Oh, you are from Ciervo Blanco. We like your book choices, and actually in our book club sometimes we follow the recommendations, the books that you read in your book club." And I was like, "Oh, cool!" Like they think that we choose good
if they
books.
know that it's so random.
Yeah. And then the next book that I chose, right after the meeting, was this very religious one about, I can't remember the title. Do you remember?
I remember.
Just for religious, you remember which one it was?
No, because
Future
I
Home of the
remember
Living Gods.
him saying
Sorry, Jessica?
Future Home of the Living God.
Yeah, that one, Future Home of the Living God. And it was so awful, so badly written and written. Like the story made no sense. And oh, well, that happens.
But that happens a lot of time for like, I think all of us, because for example, I choose the books before reading them. So
yeah.
Maybe I like it, maybe I don't.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to risk it, right? Maybe
I mean, you do all the I do the research and look for it, but maybe a lot of reviews say that it's a very good book, but then I find it very boring or very bad. So
Andrea, you have an unpopular opinion. Everybody thinks it's good but you. But yeah, sometimes it's that many people sometimes, I don't know, like a short story or a novel. It has happened here where, for example, it happened in the Three-Body Problem, right? There were some people that were haters, like, I hate this book.
Yeah.
very passionately. So
It's a Chinese author. Oh my god.
Yeah. I mean,
oh yeah, but they complain about the Chinese names that they didn't they
Yeah.
didn't distinguish one name from the other. That was funny.
Yeah. I mean, recommendations are a first filter for the books. Like mostly when I have failed choosing the books and they ended up being bad works, is because I just chose them for other reasons. But if someone recommends them or I hear different recommendations from different people, then most likely chances are that the book is good.
You trust other people?
Some other people, not all of them. Yeah. Or when the recommendation repeats, like the same book gets recommended from different people with different backgrounds that they don't know each other and still they recommend the same book, it's probably good. You have the mic muted, Jessica. Still mute? There.
Yeah, how do you send a chat message? I said I've to everyone, I've got the message, but how do you send it?
In the chat.
What?
What do you mean?
Have you received a message from me?
No.
No.
No. I
No.
think it's because in the mobile version it might be
No, I've got a PC.
Oh.
In the chat you can send the message to a specific person or
No, to everyone.
We didn't get it now.
I know. How do you send it? I have to everyone, I have my message, but now I need to send it.
Press enter. I think it's the only way.
No.
It doesn't work.
Ah.
Yeah, now it works.
There it is.
I knew it.
Thank you, Jessica, and see you next time.
Okay,
yeah,
see you,
see you
Jessica.
another time. Yeah, I think this kind of short story was very, very good to read and discuss, because I think this type of stories that don't focus so much on plot as on characters and their relationships are very good to discuss, because they are really interesting discussions. Everyone can have different opinions and different arguments.
And it was very easy to read as well. Thank God.
Yeah. But still, he had a beautiful style. To me, it was beautiful
Yeah.
to read. So it was not only simple, but also quite beautiful, quite distinct.
It's like everybody's saying in a way, like it makes me feel like warm inside. I don't know how to explain it. It was like a very cute story. I don't know.
Cute.
That's cute.
That's adorable. Like, makes me feel warm.
But it does, indeed. Yeah, it's a very sad story about emotions, about feelings.
Yeah, I think someone said it was touching, and I really agree.
Yeah,
it touched my heart.
Yeah, that's a better way to explain it.
So maybe we can read another Ken Liu story one of these days.
Yeah, why not?
Or maybe it's an unpopular opinion. I don't know.
No, it's quite popular, I think. Like you could do the discussion and everybody will come.
Yeah, it's going to be quite different from the next one. That is an Angela Carter book that's called The Bloody Chamber, because that has nothing cute about it. It's so gory, so different. It's more like a horror story. So yeah, I like that we pick different things to read, because there's something for everyone.
Yeah, nice. Finally, some blood, some gore.
You're in a dark mood.
And kind of I am, because the Spanish one is as well as is horror as well. So the weekend is gonna be.
Which one is
the Spanish one, the La Resucitada.
Oh, from Emilia Pardo Bazán.
It's an horror story as well. Yeah. So the weekend is gonna be interesting.
Interesting.
Indeed.
Well, I think we said it before, but if anyone has any suggestions as for future short stories or future books that you would like to read, you can let us know anytime. So if you recommend a book, we will be more likely to read it, as Adrian said, than some others. So it really counts if you recommend it.
Not necessarily right now, but at some point, just shoot
Yeah,
us an email.
because there's a long waiting list, right?
Yeah. No, I mean that we'll read it whenever we have time, but to make this suggestion doesn't have to be right now. Like you can send us an email or whatever.
Guys, I'm gonna log off. I have a work thing that I need to do. So it was a very nice discussion. Thank you.
Okay.
See you next time.
Bye.
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 So any ideas for the next reading after the ones that are planned?
There are a lot
Oh,
planned.
I'm reading this one. There are a collection of short stories from Flannery O'Connor. Some of them are very good and very intense. Very, they have an impact. They make an impact.
Impact is good.
So yeah. Like you what the fuck? That kind of impact. So
cool.
yeah, like it says here, she's horrifyingly funny. It's a cool, removed style combined with very black stories. They're very black stories, and it's interesting. They are all set in south, the south of the United States, in the deep south. They speak about. They're all about the culture of the south of the United States in the first half of the 20th century. So it has a lot of racist issues, but a lot of also this rural thing related with the south of the United States. So I think it's been an enjoyable reading.
Cool.
It sounds good, actually.
Yeah, very interesting.
And she's a warm writer.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the name, please?
Yeah, I'm gonna put it here.
Oh, in the chat. That
Okay,
would be
perfect.
great.
Thank you.
And the collection is hard to find.
Hadn't heard about
Good minds, hard to find.
Yeah.
I like the title.
That's true.
And that story, A Good Man is Hard to Find, is nothing, like it's not related with the title at all. So they're also very related with religion, because this woman was very Catholic, and
I know someone isn't going to like that.
No, I'm gonna say Adrian is gonna love it.
No, but it depends. Is very religious criticizing religion, or is very religious because they are believers? Because if they are believers, then I probably won't like it. That's right.
That's what he said, that the woman was very...
They tell you moralizing stories, but in a very dark way. And they are told as, I don't know the word in English, parabolas. But you just realize they're parabolas at the end. But it's very dark, some of them.
Still, Adrian, if it's a southern US, it cannot be Catholic. It has to be Baptist. So you're safe.
Oh, this one is Catholic. This one is Catholic.
I mean, I just don't like religions in general.
When you said religious, I thought it was going to be about voodoo magic, and now I'm disappointed. Because in southern United States there's a lot of voodoo magic, so I wanted to see that. Don't you think voodoo magic is interesting, even if it's not very religious, Adrian?
Yeah, I mean, I put superstitions and magic and religions and supernatural beings and myths
In the
all
same
in the same
place.
package. It fits everything in the same box. It's all irrational beliefs that we believe in because we were taught when we were kids. Like if we grow up in Galicia believing that megas exist, then when we are adults, we really believe that there's these magical fairies around mingling with our lives. And if we grow up believing that there's a magical fairy in the sky that watches us constantly and that he flew the entire world and saved the animals in a boat, then we become adults that believe in this stuff. Obviously for me, it's not real, it's just fairy tales, but it's all the same kind of supernatural beliefs.
But voodoo is more fun than Catholicism, for sure.
I agree. I know it's fun. Yeah, I like to read about those type of things that are a bit dark, but you can also find it a bit funny. For example, like I would like to read about a character in southern United States that does voodoo magic. I find that interesting, and that it can be an interesting story. It moves me to keep reading because it's something different. That's how I see it.
I'm sure there's a short story.
I will search for it. But yeah, for example, Angela Carter is it's the short story I chose for the next discussion. She's an author that I really, really got into the first time I heard about her, just because I knew that she wrote about traditional fairy tales, but in a different way, in a dark and gritty and mysterious way, and I really like that. So, and I don't like short stories often, not enough to pay money for a book of short stories, but I did for her because I knew I was going to like them because of this different spin that she puts on it, and she didn't disappoint me at all. I really love the book I have of short stories. It's the only book I own of short stories, and it's so beautiful and so interesting that it hooked me. But because it has this different, I think there's a voodoo priest in that in that book. Maybe that also counts. But yeah, it's all about finding different things to read for me, this different touch. For example, a Chinese science fiction plot, that is different. And that we can enjoy.
Eugenia, sorry. The fairy tales are the normal fairy tales that we know, the Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, all these ones, or there are another folk fairy tales?
They are from both. Just a second. The book is here. It's a very long book. Very long. And in it, you have an index right at the end. And from the names of each part, you can, I don't know if I can show it.
I can.
Now it's hooked. You see there's a name here on the part? Well, for every few tales, the part is named after how the main heroines are, or if it's about witches, or if it's about princesses, it's different. Or, for example, there's a part that's called Of Fools, de Tontos. So it tells you a bit about how the tales are, but it includes all these tales of Blancanieves and La Bella Durmiente and Cenicienta, but also a lot more from all over the world. For example, the first tale is a tale about, a traditional, I believe it was Alaskan fairy tale. An Alaskan story. It's about seal hunters, and so it has a little bit of all. It has Native American stories, Russian. So there's a bit of everything, but also our traditional ones are all included. Well, the Bloody Chamber, the one that we're going to read, isn't in this compilation, but it's about, it's the tale of Barbazul.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how, it's Bluebeard in English, I think. But yeah, so most of them are here, the more common ones, but a few other ones are also in other compilations of short stories. But I think she has her own version of the fairy tales we know and more.
Bluebeard is pretty dark. Even the
Makes it
original
darker
one.
in the Bloody Chamber. She makes it
Wow.
even darker. So yeah.
Okay. It's going to be a lot of blood.
Bluebeard was very dark to read as a child. I just thought about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, she, for example, when I read it the first time, the first story, it's a very short one. I think it's only a page long. And it's about a woman whom I can't remember it very well, but she's, the people from her village are seal hunters because they're from Alaska or Canada, northern Canada. So she one day decides that she wants to be a man. So she hunts a seal. She takes its penis and puts it on herself, and now she's a man. So that's the first thing you read in this book. So yeah, it's quite a ride, but I thought it was different, original. Some of the tales are darker, and others are just uncommon or twisted. But I think they're cool. I really like her. Hope you will.
Thank you.
Well, guys, I need to leave.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave as well.
Yeah, I think it's a good moment to
I'm
end
really hungry right now.
the discussion here. Yeah, it's quite late. Okay,
for
so
everything.
thank you all for coming and for the marvelous, wonderful discussion that we had.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for
Bye.
Time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.